All right. Emotional healing. It's
Oh,
something we all think about, right? Today we're diving deep into Emotional Healing for Dummies. And let me tell you, this book gets real.
It really does. Emotional healing can sound kind of vague, but this book doesn't mess around. It connects emotions to our bodies, our thoughts, our relationships. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I was hooked from the introduction.
yeah.
They call emotions an internal compass,
Yeah.
which I thought was interesting. Because, like, most of us try to avoid negative emotions at all costs, right?
Yeah.
But what if you're trying to tell us something?
That's exactly it. They are trying to tell us something. Even the bad emotions, they're not the enemy. Think of them as signals, like, hey, there's a need here that's not being met. And get this, if you ignore those signals for too long, it can actually show up in your body, like physically. Isn't that wild?
Hold on, we have to talk about this whole mind-body connection because
Yeah.
that's where things get really interesting in the book.
Right. We hear it all the time, stress can make you sick. But this book explains exactly how. When you're stressed, your body pumps out cortisol, and over time, high cortisol. It's basically wreaking havoc on your system, making you more vulnerable to all sorts of health problems.
So it's not just in our heads, it's a real physical response. Like, imagine your boss dumps a huge project on you right before you're about to leave work. That feeling in your chest, your heart racing, that your body reacting to the emotional stress.
And ignoring those signs, it's like ignoring the check engine light in your car. Sooner or later, something's got to give. The good news is, this book doesn't just point out the problem, it actually gives you tools to deal with it.
Okay, enough teasing. Spill the beans. What kind of tools are we talking about?
Well, one of the simplest and yet most effective is deep belly breathing. I know it sounds almost too basic, right? But think about it. When you're stressed, you take these short, shallow breaths, and it just feeds the anxiety cycle. But deep belly breathing, it's like hitting the reset button. It calms your nervous system, gives you a little space from that overwhelming feeling.
I love that visual. Like, you're learning to ride the waves of your emotions instead of getting completely wiped out by them.
Yeah.
But the book goes beyond just breathing, right? It emphasizes the importance of lifestyle, too.
Oh yeah, big time. You can't expect to be emotionally balanced if you're running on fumes, right? The book really stresses making time for exercise, good nutrition, sleep. It's about building a solid foundation for emotional resilience.
It makes you realize how connected everything really is, mind, body, the whole package. Actually, you know what else they talk about? The spirit. Not just mind and body, but spirit, too.
And that's where it gets really interesting because spirit, in this sense, it's not necessarily about religion. It's more about connecting to something bigger than yourself, finding that sense of meaning. Because feeling lost or like your life doesn't have purpose, that can really drag you down emotionally.
It makes you think, what is it that really lights you up? What gives you that sense of awe and wonder of being connected to something larger than yourself? Maybe it's getting lost in a creative project or spending time in nature or even just appreciating the little things.
Exactly. And, sometimes it's not even about doing something, but more about just learning to be present in this moment, right here, right now. And that's where mindfulness comes in, which the book also dives into.
Mindfulness, it's everywhere these days.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think a lot of people get intimidated by it. Like, you're doing it wrong if your mind isn't completely blank while you're meditating.
Oh, I totally get that. It's a common misconception. The book actually emphasizes that mindfulness is a practice, just like anything else, and it takes time and patience. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to simply observe your thoughts and feelings without getting carried away by them.
So it's not about stopping your thoughts, but about developing that mental muscle to notice them without letting them control you. That actually makes mindfulness seem a lot less intimidating and a lot more doable.
It is, and there are so many different ways to practice mindfulness. The book mentions guided meditations, body scan meditations, even just taking a few moments throughout your day to focus on your breath. It's all about finding what resonates with you and incorporating it into your routine.
So it's about building that mental toolkit, right? Equipping yourself with different techniques to handle whatever challenging emotions pop up.
Exactly. And speaking of tools, they highlight something they call ANT's automatic negative thoughts. It's incredible how much our thoughts can impact our emotions, often without us even realizing it.
ANTs, I love that. It's like, I'm not good enough, or I'm going to mess this up. Those little voices that just pop up at the worst possible times.
Yes. And the book challenges us to examine those thoughts. Are they really true? What evidence do you have? It's about becoming a detective of your own mind.
So instead of just accepting those negative thoughts as truth, you're questioning them, looking for evidence, and then I'm guessing consciously choosing to reframe them in a more positive or at least more realistic light.
You got it. They call it cognitive reframing. It might sound complicated, but it's basically just shifting your thinking patterns. The book actually provides a step-by-step process. You identify the ANTs, challenge their validity, and then replace them with more helpful thoughts.
It's amazing how quickly we can get sucked into those negative thought spirals without even realizing it. And that actually reminds me, and the book also delves into how our past experiences, especially our childhoods, can shape our emotional responses in the present.
It's so true. And the book really emphasizes how important it is to understand your family history and the way you were raised. It's not about blaming your parents or anything, but just recognizing how those early experiences might be unconsciously influencing your current relationships and patterns.
It's like we're running on autopilot sometimes, following
Mhm.
these old scripts without even knowing it.
Mm.
But if those patterns are unconscious, how do we even begin to change them?
The good news is, just like with the ANTs, we can learn to rewrite those ingrained scripts. And the book provides a lot of exercises to help with this. One that really stood out to me was the transition review. It encourages you to reflect on significant changes in your life and how you dealt with them.
Okay, so you're revisiting those periods of transition. But what's the goal? Are you just reliving the negative emotions?
That's the cool part. It's not about dwelling on the negative. It's about acknowledging those tough emotions, but then digging deeper to identify the strengths you developed during those challenging times.
So it's about looking for that silver lining, finding those hidden strengths that we might not even realize we have. I love that.
Exactly. The transition review helps you see that even in the middle of those struggles, you are building resilience. And that's something worth celebrating.
I am loving this.
Hmm.
This is already making so much sense, and we've barely scratched the surface. And we haven't even touched on what the book says about relationships, coping with major life changes, communicating effectively. There's so much good stuff in here.
Right. It's packed with wisdom.
Yeah.
And there's one more thing I wanted to mention because it's so crucial, self-compassion. The book dedicates a whole chapter to it.
Yes. Self-compassion. I think that's something so many of us struggle with. We're our own worst critics.
It's so true, isn't it? We're way harder on ourselves than we would ever be on a friend. But this book really emphasizes that healing isn't about being perfect. It's about being kind to yourself through the process. It's about accepting that we're all works in progress, just doing the best we can with what we have in this moment. Such an important reminder. And it ties into what they say about emotional healing being a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs, setbacks, breakthroughs. The important thing is to keep moving forward, one step at a time.
Absolutely. We're all in this together.
This has been so insightful already. I feel like I'm starting to view emotional healing in a whole new light thanks to this book.
Me too.
Yeah.
And we've only just started to uncover the wealth of knowledge in this book. Are you ready to explore how to express your needs clearly, handle conflict constructively, and navigate those awkward conversations with grace and compassion? Because that's where we're headed next.
All right, let's talk communication. I mean, it's a big part of emotional healing, right? So many emotional wounds come from misunderstandings, not speaking our truth, or just avoiding those tough conversations.
Oh, 100%. We've all been there, right?
Right.
Those times when you know you should say something, but you just freeze.
Yeah.
Or you blurt it out in the worst way possible and instantly regret it. Tell me about it. So how does the book approach communication? Does it offer any guidance for navigating those tricky conversations?
It does, and it's surprisingly good at it. They really break down this whole concept of assertive communication, and don't let that word assertive throw you off. It's not about being aggressive or steamrolling people. It's more about expressing your needs clearly and respectfully while still being mindful of the other person's perspective.
Okay, I like where this is going. So how do we actually practice assertive communication? Any specific techniques?
They have this acronym, Dear Man, that's pure gold. It stands for describe, express, assert, reinforce, mindfully appear, appear confident, and negotiate. It's basically your roadmap for tough conversations.
Okay, I love a good acronym. Break it down for me.
So describe is about stating the facts of the situation without judgment or blame. Just the facts, ma'am. Then you express how you feel about it using I statements like, I feel frustrated when.
So you're owning your feelings without pointing fingers. I like it. What's next?
Next, you assert your needs directly. Don't be afraid to say what you want, but also be ready to hear the other person's side. That's where reinforce comes in, finding common ground, positive outcomes. You're working towards a solution together.
So it's teamwork, not a battle.
Exactly. And then you've got the M, which stands for mindfully appear. This is about being aware of your body language. You want to appear open, receptive, not closed off or defensive.
That's so important. Our body language can speak volumes, even when we don't realize it.
Totally. And that ties into the next one, appear confident. Not arrogant, but self-assured. You know your worth.
Owning it.
Exactly. And finally, negotiate, because you might not get everything you want, but you can work towards a compromise.
Dear man, I'm writing that down. This is
Mm.
gold. But what about conversations that go beyond just expressing needs? Like, what about addressing past hurts or resolving conflicts? Those feel way more charged.
You're right, those can be really tough. The book actually spends a good amount of time on this, and one of the biggest takeaways for me was the power of forgiveness.
Okay, let's talk about that, because forgiveness can be such a loaded word. It doesn't mean what happened was okay, right? Or that you're letting the person off the hook.
You nailed it. The book makes that very clear. Forgiveness isn't about condoning hurtful actions or pretending they didn't happen. It's about letting go of the anger, the resentment you're carrying so you can move on. It's about freeing yourself, not about the other person.
That makes sense, but how do you actually do that? How do you let go of those feelings, especially if they're really deep-seated? It can't be as easy as just deciding to forgive, right?
It's a process, for sure. It takes effort. But the book does offer some concrete tools. One that resonated with me was the idea of writing a letter to the person you need to forgive. Don't hold back. Pour all your hurt and anger into it, but then try to end it by offering forgiveness. You don't even have to send it. Just the act of writing it can be incredibly cathartic.
I can see how that would be powerful, just
Yeah.
getting it all out on paper.
Exactly. And the book also emphasizes developing compassion. Compassion for yourself and even for the person you're trying to forgive. We all mess up, right? We've all been hurt and we've all hurt others, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not.
It's like that saying, hurting people hurt people. Recognizing that we're all human, flaws and all, can be a powerful step toward forgiveness.
Totally. They even have this exercise where you visualize sending loving kindness, first to yourself, then to someone you love, then to a neutral person, and finally to the person you need to forgive. It's about cultivating compassion and expanding that circle outward.
Wow, that's really beautiful. It's about shifting your perspective, seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. And remember, forgiveness, it's not a one-time thing. You might need to revisit it, especially if those feelings of anger or resentment resurface. It's a process.
Speaking of processes, another big part of emotional healing is learning to deal with those curveballs that life throws at us,
Yeah.
like those big, unexpected changes that can really shake things up.
Absolutely. Those big transitions, a job loss, a breakup, illness, grief, they can really throw you for a loop. And the book talks about how important it is to accept that change is just a part of life. It's going to happen, whether we like it or not. Fighting it only makes it harder.
So, step one is surrendering to the process.
You got it. And from there, they offer a framework for navigating that transition. It starts with acknowledging the loss, letting yourself grieve, and then eventually finding ways to move forward.
Okay, break that down for me. What does letting yourself grieve really look like?
It's different for everyone, but the important thing is to allow yourself to feel those feelings. Sadness, anger, confusion, whatever comes up. Don't judge it, don't try to rush through it, and definitely don't pretend you're fine if you're not.
We've all been there. Trying to put on a brave face when we're falling apart inside. It doesn't work.
It really doesn't. Bottling it up just makes it worse in the long run.
Hmm.
The book talks about finding healthy ways to process those emotions. Journaling, therapy, spending time in nature, creative expression. Whatever helps you release those feelings in a safe and healthy way.
Finding what works for you. Got it. But how do you actually make that shift from grieving and feeling that sense of loss to actually being able to imagine moving forward? That feels like a big leap.
It is a big leap, and the book talks about the importance of shifting your focus. Once you've allowed yourself to grieve, you can start to focus on what you can control, what you can create in this new chapter of your life.
So it's about moving from a place of loss and grief to a place of possibility and even empowerment. That's a huge mental shift. Are there any tools that can help with that?
They have this great visualization exercise where you imagine yourself a year from now. You've successfully navigated this transition. How do you feel? What does your life look like? Painting that picture of a brighter future can be really powerful.
I love that. It's not about denying the pain of the past,
Yep.
but it's about recognizing that you have the power to create a new future, even when life throws you those curveballs.
Exactly. And that's what I appreciate about this book. It reminds you that even when you're going through tough times, you have strength. You have
Right.
resilience.
It really is a powerful message. This is resonating with me on such a deep level. We've covered so much ground already, but there's one thing we haven't touched on yet. The book also talks about helping others heal, right? Like, how do we offer support to the people in our lives who are hurting?
Yes. Emotional healing, it's not just an individual journey. It extends outward into our relationships, our communities. It affects everyone around us.
So how do we support our loved ones who are struggling without overstepping our boundaries, without taking on their emotional baggage as our own?
Too
There's a
late.
balance there,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. And the book really emphasizes that the first and often the most important step is simply to listen. Really listen with empathy and without judgment. Sometimes that's all someone needs, to feel heard and understood without being offered solutions or unsolicited advice.
Just holding space for them to process their emotions without trying to fix it or talk them out of it.
That's it. It's about being present with them in their pain, not trying to rush them through it or minimize what they're going through.
It makes so much sense. But what about boundaries? How do we support someone without getting sucked into their emotional drama or feeling responsible for fixing it for them?
That's where setting healthy boundaries comes in. You can be compassionate and supportive without becoming their therapist or taking on their problems as your own. And the book emphasizes that you can be there for someone without having to fix them. Everyone has to walk their own path.
So true. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is encourage them to seek professional help. There's no shame in that at all.
Absolutely not. We all need a little extra support sometimes.
But what about situations where you see someone stuck in a negative pattern, like making the same mistakes over and over again? How do you help someone who doesn't seem to want to help themselves?
That's a tough one, and the book actually talks about tough love. It's about setting those boundaries, letting them experience the natural consequences of their actions, even when it's hard to watch. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom before they're ready to change.
It's like that saying, you can't carry someone who doesn't want to be carried. You can offer support, but you can't force someone to change.
Exactly. It's not about punishing them, but about recognizing that we all have to learn our own lessons, even if it means stumbling along the way.
This is all so incredibly eye-opening. It highlights how interconnected we all are. Emotional healing isn't just this solo mission. It has a ripple effect on our relationships and the world around us.
It's so true. There's this beautifully written part in the book where they talk about how emotional healing isn't just about fixing ourselves, it's about creating a more compassionate and understanding world.
Okay, I'm getting chills. Tell me more.
It basically says that as we heal our own wounds, we become more empathetic, more compassionate toward others. We're less likely to judge or criticize, and more likely to offer kindness and support. And that, in turn, creates a ripple effect. Like they say, a rising tide lifts all boats, right?
Wow, that's beautiful. It really drives home the transformative potential of emotional healing, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us.
It's a beautiful thing, and it's a journey worth taking.
It really is. This book is like a goldmine of wisdom. We can seriously talk about it for hours.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears a bit because we've talked a lot about big picture stuff. What about the day-to-day? How do we actually make this a practice integrated into our lives instead of it just being this abstract concept?
That's such a great question, and the book doesn't disappoint. It has a whole section dedicated to exactly that. Practical ways to weave emotional well-being into your daily routine.
All right, I'm ready. Give me the goods. What are some of those daily practices that can help us stay on track?
It does. They actually call it using day-to-day strategies for emotional healing. Pretty straightforward, right?
Love it. Lay it on me. What kind of daily practices can help us stay on track with emotional healing?
Well, one of the simplest but most powerful suggestions is to start your day with intention. Instead of rolling out of bed and immediately getting swept up in the chaos of the day, take a few minutes to just be present with yourself.
Be present with yourself. What does that look like in real life?
Honestly, it can be as simple as taking a few deep breaths, or maybe setting an intention for how you want to feel that day, or even just reflecting on a few things you're grateful for. It's about creating that mindful pause before the day gets going.
So you're starting from a place of presence, of purpose, instead of just reacting to whatever comes your way.
You got it. And it doesn't have to end there. The book also talks about the importance of having little self-care rituals throughout the day.
Okay, tell me more about that. What kind of self-care rituals?
We're not talking about anything crazy or time-consuming, just little things you can do to nourish your mind, body, and spirit. Maybe it's stepping away from your desk for a quick walk, listening to some music that calms you down, or even just having a cup of tea without any distractions.
Those little things really do make a difference, don't they? Sometimes just 5 minutes of quiet time is all it takes to completely shift your energy.
Absolutely. And here's another gem from the book. Pay attention to your body's signals throughout the day.
You mean like when you hit that afternoon slump and just crave another coffee?
Exactly. But instead of just going on autopilot and reaching for that caffeine fix, pause for a second and ask yourself what your body really needs. Are you actually hungry? Do your muscles need a good stretch? Maybe a quick walk around the block would give you more energy.
It's about tuning into those subtle cues and responding to what your body actually needs, not just what your mind thinks it wants in the moment. I love that.
And because, let's face it, we all have moments where we just feel ourselves getting stressed or overwhelmed, the book recommends creating a self-soothing toolkit.
A self-soothing toolkit. Okay, what is that? Is it like a first aid kit, but for your emotions?
That's exactly what it is. It's a collection of things you know will help you calm down and hit the reset button when you're feeling anxious, stressed, or overwhelmed.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What kind of things would I put in my emotional first aid kit?
It's totally personal, but it could include things like a playlist of calming music, a favorite book, a guided meditation app, a list of positive affirmations, maybe even some aromatherapy oils, whatever helps you shift your energy and find that sense of calm.
So you're creating a resource that's personalized for you that you can turn to whenever you need a little extra support to deal with those tough emotions.
Exactly. And another point the book makes that I think is so important is that we have to find healthy ways to express our emotions. Bottling things up, it only creates more pressure and pain down the line.
It's true. Those emotions have to go somewhere. What are some of the healthy ways they talk about?
Well, they talk about journaling, creative expression, talking to someone you trust, a friend, a family member, a therapist. Even physical activity can be a great outlet.
Right. Sometimes a good workout or a run is exactly what you need to process those emotions. It's like you're moving them through your body instead of letting them fester.
Yes. And never underestimate the power of laughter.
Laughter really is the best medicine.
The book even suggests keeping a humor file, a collection of funny videos, jokes, memes, anything that always makes you laugh. That way, when you need a quick mood boost, you've got it right there at your fingertips.
Genius. Okay, I need to create a humor file, like, immediately.
Mhm.
But what about cultivating more positive emotions in general? Because it's not like we can just snap our fingers and suddenly feel happy, right?
You're right, it takes practice. But there are things we can do to nurture those positive emotions. One thing they emphasize is gratitude.
Gratitude is huge. Even just taking a moment to appreciate the good things, no matter how small, can really change your whole outlook.
It's powerful. They talk about keeping a gratitude journal. Just jot down a few things you're grateful for every day. It doesn't have to be anything big or profound. Even the simple things count.
You know, I've heard that so many times, and I know it works, but it's so easy to forget. It's so easy to just focus on what's wrong instead of what's right.
It's a practice. Like anything, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And you know what goes hand in hand with gratitude? Savoring those positive experiences.
You mean like when something good happens, really being present in that moment instead of letting it just pass you by?
Exactly. The book encourages us to soak in those moments of joy, to really experience them fully. They even suggest taking pictures or jotting down a few notes about these positive experiences so you can revisit them later and relive those good feelings.
I love that. It's like creating a highlight reel of your life that you can return to whenever you need a boost.
Exactly. It's all about creating those positive anchors for yourself. But here's the thing, as much as we've talked about individual practices, we can't forget that we're not alone in this.
Absolutely. We've said it before, but it's worth repeating. We're social creatures. We need connection.
And the book really drives home the importance of community and support in this process of emotional healing. It encourages us to nurture those healthy relationships, surround ourselves with people who lift us up, and when we need it, to reach out for professional support, because sometimes we just can't do it all on our own, and that's okay.
More than okay. It's essential. There's no shame in asking for help, whether it's from a therapist, a support group, a trusted friend.
Exactly. We all need support sometimes.
Wow. This has been such an incredible conversation. Emotional Healing for Dummies. It really lives up to its name in terms of making these concepts practical and accessible. I don't know about you, but I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for navigating the ups and downs of life, with a little more grace and self-awareness.
Me too.
Mhm.
And to everyone listening out there, remember healing is possible. Start where you are with what you have and trust the process. You're stronger than you think, and you are not alone.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep believing in your own capacity for healing.